today's class, we will study the Regulating Act of 1773, the Charter Act of 1793, the Charter Act of 1813, 1833, and at the last, 1853. Guys, so let's study today the constitutional development of India. So it began with the Regulating Act of 1773. So we all know that the East India Company got the charter to do business in India from the crown of British crown in the year 1600. So they continued this business for about a century or so, but then came in the problems. The crown, the British crown, identified these defects. Okay, they identified these defects, and that's why they enacted this Regulating Act of 1773 to correct these defects. So by enacting this act, they formally recognized the political power that the East India Company had until then. So by this, they tried to correct some measures. What they did was that they introduced more reforms through this act, and by enacting this Regulating Act, the British Crown in a way asserted its power to dictate the political actions, the government, the acts of the government that was personal possession of the company till then. मतलब क्या, तब तक सिर्फ कंपनी डिसाइड करता था कि कैसे चलाया जाए, how the administration should be run, how the government should be run. But after this act, वो ब्रिटिश क्राउन ने ये assert किया, ये dominance दिखाया कि we will decide how you will conduct the affairs, how you will run the affairs, how you will rule the subjects. So this act is also significant for another reason. What this act did was that this act started the process of consolidating India. उसके पहले इंडिया princely states में divided था. इंडिया ऐसा एक इंडिया नहीं था. India was not this India which we know today. तब the British what they did, they started to consolidate the India through its presidencies. So they appointed a governor general and 4 councillors to the William Fort of the Bengal presidency, and they gave the power to these governor generals and councillors to manage the affairs of the rest of the 2 presidencies. जो बाकी का पोजीशन था ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी का, कहाँ था? बंगाल में था, मद्रास में था, बॉम्बे में था. तो by appointing such governor generals in Bengal and giving them the power to decide what will be done with the rest of the presidencies, they started to connect these regions. बहुत अलग-अलग, बहुत दूर-दूर था. So
जल्दी बोल, कल सुबह पनवेल निकलना है.
This started the process of consolidating India, because even there was a administrator named John Strachey. उनको ऐसा belief था that there is no one India. उसके पहले the person living in Bengal would not relate to the customs and cultures of people living in Punjab, or for example Madras. क्या similarity है the people living in Madras in comparison to people living in Bombay or Kolkata? कोई similarity नहीं था. But this action of British started to So this act started to integrate the east of the India to west of the India to the south of the India. So before this, there was no one India according to John Strachey. So this started this process. So let's move on to the defects. There were many defects. So in order to correct these defects, the Crown, the British government came up with another act, the Pitt's India Act of 1784. उसके पहले भी 1781 में act हुआ था. In 1781 हुआ था, and then the Pitt's India Act of 1784. So this act tried to correct the defects that was committed while enacting this Regulating Act of 1784. So what's this act important? Why is this act important? What this act did was it took the power from the company, the East India Company, and gave it to the Board of Control. So Board of Control was a body which was directly subordinate to the British government. So, and then the Board of Control dictated what will be done by the company. So the directors of the company in a way was rendered powerless. उनसे पावर छीन के बोर्ड ऑफ कंट्रोल को दे दिया, और बोर्ड ऑफ कंट्रोल किसके अंदर था? द ब्रिटिश गवर्नमेंट के अंदर. सो नाउ द कंपनी वाज नॉट इन अ सिंगल हैंडेडली रनिंग द अफेयर्स इन इंडिया, बट द बोर्ड ऑफ कंट्रोल वाज डूइंग. सो दिस वाज द फर्स्ट ऑफ द attempt to decentralize the power from the company to the government. It was taking the जो power दे दिया था 1600 में, it was starting to take back. So after this शुरू हुआ the सिलसिला चार्टर एक्ट का. So the first charter act was in the year 1793. But this charter act is not that important, so let's move on to next charter act, the charter act of 1733. So the government जो था, they started to give out lease to this East India Company for a period of 20 years. So after every 20 years, the government renewed this lease. 1793 में दिया, and then 1883 में दिया. So after 1793, let's move on to the Charter Act of 1813. So why is this Charter Act important? It's important because this Charter Act ended the monopoly of the East India Company. How? It opened the markets of India to the rest of the Britain. Now only not East India Company can do business in India, but anyone from England, Britain can do the business in India. So it broke the monopoly of East India Company. And what this Charter Act did? This Charter Act allowed the missionaries to come to India and to start propagating Christianity. So it's from 1813 that Christianity started to be disseminated, to be propagated in India. तब से Christianity शुरू हुआ इंडिया में फैलना. तो and why is this important? This act important? Because this act for the first time put this clause that a sum of 1 lakh rupees will have to be earmarked. इस पैसे को, हाँ, इस पैसे को तब तो इस साइन नहीं था, पर फिर भी तब 1 लाख पैसा अलग से रखना होगा फॉर द इंटेलेक्चुअल एंड डेवलपमेंट ऑफ साइंसेज इन इंडिया. मतलब इंडिया में पढ़ने का कल्चर, पढ़ाने का कल्चर और वो सिस्टम बनाने के लिए 1 लाख रुपए कंपनी को अलग से रखना ही होगा. सो दिस वॉज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट फ्रॉम दिस सेंस, दिस एक्ट. सो नाउ लेट्स मूव ऑन टू द चार्टर एक्ट ऑफ 1833. Why is this act important? This act separated the commercial. This act separated the commercial and the political activities of the company. It stopped the commercial, put a stop to this commercial and only concentrated on the political affairs. Like now the company have to only focus on this political affairs. So the company in a sense became a political wing of the government of Britain to regulate the affairs, the political affairs, the administration, day-to-day affairs of this Indian colony. So in a way, the government of Britain started to dominate more in the political and administrative activities of the company. और कंपनी अपना पावर खोता गया with the successive acts. With every successive acts जो renew करना पड़ा, the lease was renewed for in every 20 years. 1793, फिर 13, फिर 33. With every successive step acts, कंपनी का पावर घटता गया and गवर्नमेंट का पावर बढ़ता गया. So this is what this act did. And what this act did was it enlarged the legislative activities. जो council था, central council, central government का council, it enlarged the council and कुछ uniform acts लाया. Like earlier, only this provincial council, legislative council of Madras का हो गया, फिर this Bengal का हो गया, Bombay का हो गया, they could have separate laws. But after this 1833, they brought a uniform law. मतलब जो बंगाल में होगा वही मद्रास में होगा, वही बॉम्बे में होगा. So it brought this uniformity. So in a way, it started to tie up India. So from that point of view, this act is very important. So the board, the director of the companies, जो थे very powerful before this, were started to lose power. And the last Charter Act was done in the year 1853. So now the last act of Charter Act of 1853. So we know that the lease to this company, East India Company, was renewed every 20 years. 1793, 1813, 1833, now the last 1853. Why is 1853 Charter Act important? Because this act started the culture of, and again expanding the activities of the legislature. So it began the culture of discussing the policies of the executive council in the legislature. So, and it started to refer to this policies, to select committees to discuss these affairs, these activities to in public. So it started in a way with discussing to referring to these policies to select committees to from discussing the policies of the executive council in legislature and making it public, more public. It started the parliamentary form of governance in India. So it was in a way the inception of parliamentary practices. The inception, it started, अब से शुरू हो गया parliamentary practices in India. But इसमें फिर भी deficiencies था, कुछ lagging behind था, कुछ कमजोरी था, कुछ negatives था. What was it? That it did not accommodate more of Indians in these activities. जो भी कर रहे थे इनमें Indians नहीं थे. They were doing this for Indians. हमारे लिए कर रहे थे, पर इनमें activities में Indian involved नहीं थे. पर one more positive was this, that जो भी लोग थे, they were recruited to do all this parliamentary and executive duties were chosen on the basis of merit. Merit में they were chosen कि merit हो तभी लेते हैं, पर Indians नहीं लेते हैं. तो this was a very big problem. So हमें सबको पता है that what happened in 1857. So this was the last Charter Act. उसके बाद आता है this year. It's very important. We all know the revolt of 1857. So all these developments of Charter Act was till 1853. But Indians जो भी steps, जो more liberty, जो devolution of power देख रहे थे, was not enough for us क्योंकि power मिल नहीं रहा था. So it led to this event of 1857 जहाँ पे हमने revolt कर दी. After that there were more regulations जो हम next class में पढ़ेंगे. So yeah, this is how I will wind up the Charter Acts and regulating it. So, in today's video we covered these two topics. Okay, so stay tuned for more videos and please subscribe to Parlo.